Hello, hello. Chapter 17, Halo, the Fall of Reach. I have coffee again this morning. Chapter 17, 0320 hours. July 17th, 2552. Military calendar. UNSC Iroquois. En route to Sigma Octanus 4. Commander Keyes stood with his hands behind his back and tried to look calm. Not an easy thing to do when his ship was on a collision course with a Covenant battle group. Inside, adrenaline raced through his blood and his pulse pounded. He had to at least appear in control for his crew. He was asking a lot from them. Probably everything, in fact. His junior officers watched their status monitors. They occasionally glanced nervously at him, but their gazes always drifted back to the center view screen. The Covenant ships looked like toys in the distance. It was dangerous to think of them as harmless, however. One slip, one underestimation of their tremendous firepower, and the Iroquois would be destroyed. The alien carrier had 3 bulbous sections. Its swollen center had 13 launch bays. Commander Keyes had seen hundreds of fighters stream out of them before. Fast, accurate, and deadly craft. Normally, his ship's AI would handle point defense. Only this time, there was no AI installed on the Iroquois. The alien destroyer was a third, again, as massive as the Iroquois. She bristled with pulse laser turrets, insect-like antennae, and chitinous pods. The carrier and destroyer moved together, but not toward Iroquois. They slowly drifted in-system toward Sigma Octanus 4. Were they going to ignore him? Glass the planet without even bothering to swat him out of the way first? The Covenant frigates, however, lagged behind. They turned in unison, and their sides faced the Iroquois, preparing for a broadside. Motes of red light appeared and swarmed toward the frigate's lateral lines, building on into a solid stripe of hellish illumination. Detecting high levels of beta particle radiation, Lieutenant Dominique said. They're getting ready to fire their plasma weapons, Commander. Course correction, sir? Lieutenant Jaggers asked. His fingers tapped in a new heading-bound out system. Stay on course. It took all Commander Keyes' concentration to say that matter-of-factly. Lieutenant Jaggers turned and started to speak, but Commander Keyes didn't have time to address his concerns. Lieutenant Hikawa, Commander Keyes said, arm a Shiva missile. Remove all nuclear launch safety locks. Shiva armed. Aye, Commander. Lieutenant Hikawa's face was a mask of grim determination. Set the fuse on radio transmission code sequence detonation only. Disable proximity fuse. Stand by for a launch pilot program. Sir? Lieutenant Hikawa looked confused by his order, but then said, Sir, yes sir, making it happen. The alien frigates in the center of the view screen no longer looked remotely like toys to Commander Keyes. They looked real, and larger every second. The red glow along their sides had become solid bands, almost too bright to look at. Commander Keyes picked up his datapad and quickly tapped in calculations. Velocity, mass, and heading. He wished they had an AI online to double-check his figures. This amounted to no more than an educated guess. How long would it take the Iroquois to orbit Sigma Octanus 4? He got a number and cut it by 60%, knowing they'd either pick up speed or be dead by the time it mattered. Lieutenant Hikawa set the Shiva's course for Mark 180, full burn for 12 seconds. Aye, sir, she said, tapped in the parameters, and locked them into the system. Missile ready, sir. Sir! Lieutenant Jaggers swiveled around and stood. His lips were drawn into a tight, thin line. That course fires the missile directly away from our enemies. I am aware of that, Lieutenant Jaggers. Sit down and await further orders. Lieutenant Jaggers sat. He rumbled his temple with a trembling hand. His other hand balled into a fist. Commander Keyes linked to the nav system and set a countdown timer on his datapad. 29 seconds. On my mark, Lieutenant Hikawa. Launch that nuke, and not a moment before. Aye, sir. Her slender hand hovered over the control panel. Mat guns are still hot, Commander, she reminded him. Divert the energy, keep the capacitors at full charge, and route them to the engines, Commander Keyes ordered. Lieutenant Hall said, Diverting now, sir. She exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Hikawa. Engines now operating at 150% of rated output. Red line in 2 minutes. Contact, contact, Lieutenant Dominique shouted. Enemy plasma torpedoes away, sir. Scarlet lightning erupted from the alien frigates. Twin bolts of fire streaked through the darkness. They looked as if they could burn space itself. The torpedoes were on a direct course for the Iroquois. Course correction, sir? Lieutenant Jagger's voice broke with strain. His uniform was soaked with perspiration. Negative, Commander Keyes replied. Continue on this heading. Arm all aft Archer missile pods. Rotate launch arcs 180 degrees. Aye, sir. Lieutenant Hikawa wrinkled her brow, and then she slowly nodded and silently mouthed, Yes. Boiling red plasma filled half the forward view screen. It was beautiful to watch in an odd way, like a front row seat at a forest fire. Keyes found himself strangely calm. This would either work, or it would not. The odds were long, but he was confident that his actions were the only option to survive this encounter. Lieutenant Dominique turned. Collision with plasma in 19 seconds, sir. Jaggers turned from his station. Sir, this is suicide. Our armor can't withstand. Keyes cut him off. Mister, man your station or I'll have to remove you from the bridge. Jaggers looked pleadingly at Hikawa. We're going to die, Aki. She refused to meet his gaze and turned back to her controls. You heard the commander, she said quietly. Man your post. Jaggers sank into his seat. Collision with plasma in 7 seconds, Lieutenant Hall said. She bit her lower lip. Lieutenant Jaggers, transfer emergency thruster controls to my station. Yes, sir. The emergency thrusters were tanks of trihyd tetrazine and hydrogen peroxide. When they mixed, they did so with explosive force, literally blasting the Iroquois onto a new course. The ship had 6 such tanks strategically placed on hardened points on the hull. Commander Keyes consulted the countdown timer on his datapad. Lieutenant Hikawa, fire the nuke. Shiva away, sir. On course 180, maximum burn. Plasma filled the forescreen. The center of the red mass turned blue. Greens and yellows radiated outward. The light frequencies blue shifting in spectra. Distance 300,000 kilometers, Lieutenant Dominique said. Collision in 2 seconds. Commander Keyes waited a heartbeat, then hit the emergency thrusters to port. A bang resonated throughout the ship's hull. Commander Keyes flew sideways and impacted with the bulkhead. The view screen was full of fire, and the bridge was suddenly hot. Commander Keyes stood. He counted the beats of his pounding heart. 1, 2, 3. If they had been hit by the plasma, there wouldn't be anything to count. They would be dead already. Only one view screen was working now, however. Aft camera, he said. The twin bolts of fire streaked along their trajectories for a moment, then lazily arced, continuing their pursuit of the Iroquois. One pulled slightly ahead of its counterpart, so they appeared now like 2 blazing eyes. Commander Keyes marveled at the alien's ability to direct that plasma from such a great distance. Good, he murmured to himself. Chase us all the way to hell, you bastards. Track them, he ordered Lieutenant Hall. Aye, sir, she said. Her perfectly groomed hair was tousled. Plasma increasing velocity, matching our speed, overtaking our velocity now. They will intercept in 43 seconds. Forward camera, Commander Keyes ordered. The view screen flashed. The image changed to show 2 alien frigates, turning to face the incoming Iroquois head-on. Blue lights flickered along their hulls. Pulse lasers charging. Commander Keyes pulled back the camera angle and saw the alien carrier and the destroyer were still inbound towards Sigma Octanus 4. He read their position off his datapad and quickly performed the necessary calculations. Course correction, he told Lieutenant Jaggers. Come about to heading 004.25, declination 00.18. Aye, sir, Jaggers said. 004.25, declination 000.18. The view screen turned and centered on the enormous Covenant destroyer. Collision course, Lieutenant Hall announced. Impact with Covenant destroyer in 8 seconds. Stand by for new course correction. Declination minus 000.10. Aye, sir. As Jaggers typed, he wiped sweat from his eyes and double-checked his numbers. Course online. Awaiting your orders, sir. Collision with Covenant destroyer in 5 seconds, Hall said. She clutched the edge of her seat. The destroyer grew in the view screen. Laser turrets and launch bays, bulbous alien protrusions, and flickering blue lights. Hold this course, Commander Keyes said. Sound collision alarm. Switch to undercarriage camera now. Klaxons blared. The view screen snapped off and on, and showed black space, then a flash of the faint purple-blue hull of a Covenant ship. The Iroquois screeched and shuddered as she grazed the prow of the Covenant destroyer. Silver shields flickered on screen, then the screen filled with static. Course correction now, Commander Keyes shouted. Aye, sir. There was a brief burn from the thrusters, and the Iroquois nudged down slightly. Hull breach, Lieutenant Hall said. Sealing pressure doors. Aft camera, Commander Keyes said. Guns fire aft Archer missile pods. Missiles away, Lieutenant Hikawa replied. Keyes watched as the first of the plasma torpedoes that had been trailing the Iroquois impacted on the prow of the alien destroyer. The ship's shields flared, flickered, and vanished. The second bolt hit a moment later. The hull of the alien ship blazed, then turned red hot, melted and boiled. Secondary explosions burst through the hull. The Archer missiles streaked toward the wounded Covenant ship, tiny trails of exhaust stretching from the Iroquois to the target. They slammed into the gaping wounds in the hull and detonated. Fire and debris burst from the destroyer. A smile spread across Keyes' face as he watched the alien ship burn, list, and slowly plunge into Sigma Octanus IV's gravity well. Without power, the Covenant vessel would burn up in the planet's atmosphere. Commander Keyes flicked on the intercom. Brace for emergency thruster maneuver. He punched the thruster controls. Explosive force detonated on the starboard side of the ship. The Iroquois' nose toward Sigma Octanus IV. Course correction, Lieutenant Jaggers, he said. Bring us into a tight orbit. Aye, sir. He furiously tapped in commands, diverting engine output through altitude thrusters. The hull of the Iroquois glowed red as it entered the atmosphere. A cloud of yellow ionization built up around the view screen. Commander Keyes gripped the railing tighter. The view screen cleared, and he could see the stars. The Iroquois entered the dark side of the planet. Commander Keyes slumped forward and started breathing again. Engine coolant failure, sir, Lieutenant Hall said. Shut the engines down, he ordered. Emergency vent. Aye, sir. Venting fusion reactor plasma. The Iroquois was abruptly quiet. No rumble of her engines, and no one said anything until Lieutenant Hikawa stood and said, Sir, that was the most brilliant maneuver I've ever seen. Commander Keyes gave a short laugh. You think so, Lieutenant? If one of his students had proposed such a maneuver in his tactics class, he would have given them a C+. He would have told them that their maneuver was full of bravado and daring, but extremely risky, placing the crew in the ship in unnecessary danger. This isn't over yet. Stay sharp, he told them. Lieutenant Hikawa, what is the charge status of the MAC guns? Capacitors at 95%, sir, and draining at the rate of 30% per minute. Ready MAC guns. 1 heavy round apiece. Arm all forward Archer missile pods. Aye, sir. The Iroquois broke free the dark side of Sigma Octanus IV. Fire chemical thrusters to break orbit, Lieutenant Hall. Firing. Aye. There was a brief rumble. The screen centered on the backsides of the 2 Covenant frigates that they had passed on the way in. The alien ships started to come about. Blue flashes flickered along their hulls as their laser turrets charged. Motes of red color collected along their lateral lines. They were readying another salvo of plasma torpedoes. There was something there, however, that was too small to see on the view screen. The nuke. Keyes had launched that missile in the opposite direction, but its reverse thrust had not completely overcome their tremendous forward velocity. As the Iroquois had screamed over the prow of the destroyer, and as they orbited Sigma Octanus IV, the nuke had drifted closer to the frigates, who had fixed their attention solidly on the Iroquois. Commander Keyes tapped his datapad and sent the signal to detonate the bomb. There was a flash of white, a crackle of lightning, and the alien ships vanished as a cloud of destruction enveloped them. Waves of the EMP interacted with the magnetic field of Sigma Octanus IV, rippled with Rainbow Borealis. The cloud of vapor expanded and cooled, and faded to yellow, orange, red, then black dust that scattered into space. Both Covenant frigates, however, were still intact. Their shields, however, flickered once, then went dead. Get me firing solutions for the MAC guns, Lieutenant Hikawa. On the double. Aye, sir. MAC gun capacitors at 93%. Firing solution online. Fire, Lieutenant Hikawa. 2 thumps resonated through the hull of the Iroquois. Lock remaining Archer missile pods on targets and fire. Missiles away, Commander. Twin thunderbolts and hundreds of missiles streaked toward the 2 helpless frigates. The MAC rounds tore through them. One ship was holed from nose to tail. Nails. The other ship was hit on her midline, right near the engines. Internal explosions chained up the length of the ship, bulging the second ship's hull along her length. Archer missiles impacted seconds later, exploding through chunks of hull and armor, tearing the alien ships apart. The frigate that had taken the MAC round in her engines mushroomed, a fireworks bouquet of shrapnel and sparks. The other ship burned, her internal skeletal structure showing now. She turned toward the Iroquois but didn't fire a weapon, just drifted out of control, dead in space. Position of the Covenant carrier, Lieutenant Hall? Lieutenant Hall paused, then reported. In polar orbit around Sigma Octanus IV, but she's moving off at considerable speed. Headed out system, course 045. Alert the Allegiance in Gettysburg of her position. Commander Keyes sighed and slumped back into his chair. They had stopped the Covenant ships from glassing the planet, saved millions of lives. They had done the impossible, taken on 4 Covenant ships, and won. Commander Keyes paused in his self-congratulation. Something was wrong. He had never seen the Covenant run. In every battle he had seen or read about, they stayed to slaughter every last survivor, or if they were defeated, they always fought to the last ship. Check the planet, he told Lieutenant Hall. Look for anything. Dropped weapons, strange transmissions. There's got to be something there. Aye, sir. Keyes prayed she wouldn't find anything. At this point, he was out of tricks. He couldn't turn the Iroquois around and return to Sigma Octanus IV, even if he had wanted to. The Iroquois' engines were down for a long time. They were speeding on an out-system vector at a considerable velocity, and even if they could stop, there was no way to recharge the MAC guns and no remaining Archer missiles. They were practically dead in space. He pulled out his pipe and steadied his shaking hand. Sir, Lieutenant Hall cried. Dropships, sir. The alien carrier deployed 34 dropships. I have silhouettes descending to the surface. They're on course for Côte d'Azur, a major population center. An invasion, Commander Keyes said. Get FleetCom ASAP. Time to send in the Marines. Chapter 18. I hope I pronounced that city correctly. That was fucking fire. I don't know how he gets demoted from commander to captain. That's still probably it. Because like he said, incredibly risky. But he just did maybe the coolest fucking thing of all time as a commander. That's like... I don't even know how he thought of that. That was crazy. I mean, I do. Like, it's pretty obvious if they're tracking you. But, that could have gotten everyone killed, including him. And he was just chill with it. Anyway. Firebook. That's about it. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.